Janice Combs is Janice Combs was a gangster of sorts in her own right. So she was married to a guy that worked for the biggest drug pushers on the Eastern Seaboard. He was moving a lot of heroin allegedly, or helping people that were moving a lot of heroin allegedly.
Say Brown.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Brown. Sorry. Well, it was the white then, but anyway, to make a long story short, she was turning tricks. I'm not making this stuff up. This is accepted. So when the husband died, she was left a bunch of money, and she went and moved to the burbs, and to keep the same lifestyle, she worked as a teacher and then pulled other shifts as a substitute teacher. And every night of the week was bringing Johns home to the house, turning tricks, allegedly. So this is a son watching his mom sleep with a different dude every night for cash. I'm sure that has had an effect. I think she is culpable in this in so many ways you wouldn't believe it. And I don't just mean raising a kid that was a monster. I mean, allegedly, a lot of these properties, a lot of these assets are in his mom's name. Now, whether or not that turns out to be true, there's a lot of rappers that think it's true. You heard Mace. You want receipts? Check your mom. Get the receipts there.
Yeah, shout out to Jaguar Wright. She came on and was talking about, the making of the Bad Boy documentary. The photo of Diddy when he was dressed up like a 30-year-old pimp, but he was only a little kid.
He was 4 years old.
What did you make of that, Tommy?
It was absolutely amazing. They got gold rings on his fingers. He looks like he's wearing a early Cartier wristwatch, one of the Cartier's early tank watches. I'm a watch guy. I wouldn't put my 4-year-old in a Cartier. I probably wouldn't put gold rings on his hands, but they weren't trying to make him look cool. They were trying to make him look like a pimp, right? They were trying to make him look like a gangster. And what it did, according to Patterson, his best friend, and all of the other people that hung out with him, it made him look soft. He was hanging out in a place with a bunch of guys that were kind of gangster, and he was walking around with rings and jewelry on and looking, wearing jazz shoes. He looked soft. And his mom allegedly made him get tough. She would beat on the kid. She would send him out to get beat on. His mom wanted him to get tougher, and it worked. Boy, she did that, didn't she?
So with this question, let's not name the substances, but would Diddy have been given stuff to help with withdrawals?
Nope, not in the feds. They have what they call a detox protocol. You'll be given Imodium AD, you'll be given Pepto, you'll be given ibuprofen, and then they will give you a 25 milligram diphenhydramine, which is just what do they get when you get a bug? You get Benadryl, which they give you as a sleep aid.
Do you think Courtney B, Chris Todd, and Ariel will ever be charged for holding CP or trying to sell it? So we put this one to Courtney and Chris over and over 2 weeks ago, and they insisted that that's not the case, but many people have disputed that. What do you think, Tommy?
Okay, if you knowingly held on to CP for, say, 8 years, you're guilty. They said, well, Chris Todd said, and he's a smart guy, he's an intelligent dude. He said, then whistleblowers would never come forward. A whistleblower finds CP on Monday, turns it in on Tuesday, right? Or makes a phone call the day he finds it and says, hey, I found this. That's a whistleblower. And maybe you need to collect the stuff for a while, right? But it's obvious you're collecting the stuff to deliver it. You're a whistleblower. This was given to them allegedly with the instruction, if something bad happens to me, release this. This allegedly took place in 2008. She died in 2018. We didn't hear about this until 2024 when, coincidentally, it's a hell of a paycheck. And they didn't say, hey, something bad happened to her. Let's run to the press and turn this over to everybody. Something bad happened to her. Let's write a book and sell it. Doesn't pass the smell test, if you ask me. And if by some chance they were sitting, they also say, Courtney has said, I never looked. If I handed you something and said, hold on to this for me, and you knew it was on a zip drive, I think you'd probably look at it just to make sure you're not holding on to CP for somebody or whatever. But if the instruction was, hey, if anything bad happens to me, you need to do something with this, I promise you ain't left the driveway. You're driving away, I'm looking at it. It doesn't pass the smell test that he'd go 8 years without looking at it. And if you did, when she died, you didn't look at it, Something bad did happen to her, but you didn't put it in the computer right then to see what the big mystery was because something bad just happened to her. That just doesn't pass any smell test. I'm sorry. I want to believe the guy. I've said it a million times, but that just doesn't pass the smell test.
All right, folks, we've now gone over 3,000 watching, and here's Tommy's YouTube channel in the live chat. We'll probably do about half an hour or so more. That will take us to 2 hours. So get your questions in now for all of these things that have gone on in the last few days. And Sarah says, if the SA charges don't stick for some crazy reason, what is he looking at for?
The pew-pews, yeah. So what you'd be looking at on those when you deface the serial number so that they cannot see what you have, that becomes a very serious crime. What's going to come down is this. He's had problems with the law. Now, there is a charge called felon in possession of a firearm in the US, right? But Diddy's not a felon. So, but he has been, what's his name? The president's son wasn't a felon either, but he's not allowed to possess a firearm because once you cross certain lines in our country, you can never own a firearm again. So he could be convicted of possession of firearm by a restricted person. That's not the same thing as possession of firearm by a convicted felon, which is what I went to prison for, right? This is a completely different charge, probably about 15 years at a minimum, and they could break them off to about 30. Right? Because there's 5 of them and 3 of them are defaced. The defaced ones are really the issue, but we would have to see. Here's the other thing though. If they don't get him on the human T, that's not the only thing they're charging him with. There's 2 other crimes. And as far as the one about prostitution, that one's a lock. We have people that we know he paid to show up and do these things. That's a wrap, but it's just not a very severe crime. It's just, that doesn't carry the kind of penalties that the human T does.
Sarah's wondering whether, allegedly, Diddy is responsible for Aaron Carter's death, Tupac's death, among others that died far too young.
Yeah, that one's above my pay grade. But his name certainly continues to come back up among these things, and that's not good at any time, but it's certainly not good when you're trying to pick a jury pool. We're to the point now in this country where the planes that went down, we're talking about whether or not Diddy might have had something to do with that. And I'm not being funny. Like there are the fires in LA. There are people who believe that was about Diddy. We have kind of a Diddy derangement syndrome going on that this dude, and I can't stand him more than anybody, I promise you. But I don't think there were Starbucks in tunnels and some of the other things that have come out that seem to not pass the smell test. I am the mayor of Realville. And just as a criminal, you have to take my word on this one. 3 people can keep a secret if 2 people are dead. Anytime you start hearing one of these stories, right, about like they're going to switch out for a clone. How many people had to be involved with cloning this dude and switching him out? Because if it's more than 3, you'd hear about it. I promise. In the feds, 85% of the people in there got a 5K1. That's a real statistic. 85%. Everybody tells, man. The days of the gangsters who soldier up. Yeah, that's why they make movies about those guys. Because there aren't any of them left.
Put a 1 in the chat if you feel sorry for Diddy going to hospital. Put a 2 in the chat if you're not sorry for Diddy going to hospital. He's no longer in hospital if you are sorry or not. Oh, yeah. All right, so tying into what you just said, actually, let me add something to the last question. Sarah, I'm a probability guy. I did statistics. During my education, we did a lot of statistics and probability theories. And if you look at the incidences of pneumonia on people surrounding Diddy, there's some kind of anomaly there. And also, even if he wasn't directly allegedly responsible for the deaths of Tupac, Biggie, etc., to foment an East Coast, West Coast beef that could cause any nut job to jump in on either side and try and unalive big players, people who are putting themselves out on stages in the rap community, and to then maneuver and get these rappers to go out on those stages. There's got to be some culpability there, I would say.
Well, and I will say this, and I will start off by saying that this is 100% an opinion, and only that. But my opinion is that Tupac got caught in the crossfire, in my opinion. I think that was designed to get rid of Suge Knight. And if you start looking at it from that angle instead of any other one, there was a lot of people that benefited big time as Suge Knight disappeared. As far as Aaron Carter goes, Aaron Carter, up until the day he left us, he was making videos saying they're going to try to get rid of me. So it certainly has made a